course. But if it's going to 100K, whoever. I mean, if I'm selling 10, 20, 30% of it now, if it's gonna go from 30K to 100K, I can still be a participant in the remaining part of the move. So I'm not really completely negating me the opportunity to be a participant. But the problem for me was that psychologically, I needed it. I really felt the need to see some green P&L.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I think
After
I
two
think you
years.
actually made a good decision. Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know how much you distributed or like what percentage of your allocation you distributed.
Well, it was 10% 30K, another 10% at 40, another 10% at 50, and a 15% at 60. So I basically sold half of my stock at the end of the day.
Yeah, that dude, that is beautiful. Um, that's something I didn't
No,
do. I didn't even have the wherewithal to do that.
yeah,
But
no,
that was very
no,
smart because again, you know, um, you didn't know if it was gonna. You just don't
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
right? So
I mean, it is marked. It is marked with the benefit of hindsight. But let's say Bitcoin didn't stop at 60K, and let's say it was a complete moonshot to 100K. I mean, would have been smart then. It is
well, that
some
that
sort of
kind of that
something
kind
you
of
can charge or with the benefit of hindsight. But I don't
yeah,
know. Like
that
I
kind of
I did that, and
it kind of ties into I one of the videos I posted on the channel that got the most views was the one on stock to flow deflection. And
yeah,
one of the things
yeah,
one of the things I didn't cover in there was like how to distribute. And like one of the key points, if I were to do a video on how to distribute, is you don't want to take profits. You want to take it very small percentage profits, right? Because again, like you said, you don't know like how far Bitcoin's going to continue, right? You just know that
yeah,
you're
exactly.
in an area where you want to start distributing, and so very very small. I would say your distribution was, I mean, it ended up being very good, but I think even that 10% at different levels was a little cavalier. I would be distributing, single digits, low single digits over
Yeah,
time, and that's the idea is like over time, because if you look at that stock to flow deflection, like you can, you'll get extended, it'll be overextended, but then as it gets extended, that's when price starts to jump very very quickly. So for example, like in 2017, the stock to flow deflection was very very extended when price was at 6K in 2017. So if you had sold all 100%, right, it ran up to
yeah,
20K in like a couple weeks from there.
yeah. I know, I know,
So,
I know.
but if
Like,
you would take single digit distributions, right? If you took 5%, sold at 6K, but you still had 95% on, rode that up. The idea is not to try to time the market, right? But to sort of cast a vote to the idea that it's time to be selling, which kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier about euphoria and getting maybe you get lucky on a trade, but like if price goes parabolic, right, and you have a lot of Bitcoin, you'll start to think that like you'll start to think that you're a genius,
gonna go forever,
and
right?
that the luck will go to your head. You'll start feeling like you're maybe you're 100% allocated to Bitcoin, and you're so lucky that you're 100% Irish, even if you're
Yeah,
not. But
yeah.
which is the opposite of the way you want to think, right? Like if Bitcoin starts going parabolic, you don't want to be thinking, well, I'm right. You want to be thinking, okay, I'm going to very, very slowly start to move into a sell model, a distribution model, right?
For me, beside those, talking about stock to flow, actually, I need to be honest. I wasn't really thinking about that, especially because I wasn't aware of that. But for me, it was just, you know, I mentioned this story before. I've been really burned in the bear market from 2018 to well, the middle of 2019. So for me, it was just like I've been underwater, so now I got this average price of purchasing, and Meanwhile, I started to learn how to trade, and if I look at my average purchasing price, 11K, now we are at 30K. It is, you know, at the end of the day, it's a 3R. So I should take profit because I'm now trading intraday on FX exchange market, and basically whenever I reach the 3R mark, I take profit. So why shouldn't I do it with my spot position on Bitcoin? It is the same logic.
Well,
Of
the
course,
yeah.
when I do it on no, when I do it on a foreign exchange market, I usually take 70% off of my position. But considering that Bitcoin is not just an intraday trading, I started to take profit in a very gradual way, if you want, 10%, 10%, 10%, because I know that Bitcoin can be very exuberant in its parabolic rally. So I wanted to, on one side, to take advantage of it and to take profit and banking profit in, but on the other side, keep on being exposed in it because, up until the point I don't really see a clear reversal, I still want to be in this market as long as I can.
Well, that's a great
So,
example of not
the
letting.
problem is
Yeah.
that, the problem is that it is all well and good, and, somehow I find myself looking at myself in the mirror and telling to myself, oh, well, you really played out well. I mean, you were a genius. I mean, that was a good choice. You were great. But then at the same time, I'm still looking at myself and telling myself, well, you took a decision. It paid off this time. It doesn't mean that it's gonna pay it off, next time. But you know, at least it was calculated, and you knew it. What you wanted to do ahead of time, and you do it. And I mean, that's great.
Well, on one
At least
hand,
for me,
yeah.
because I had a plan.
So on one hand, you got lucky, and on the other hand, you didn't because you
Yeah,
had a plan. So sometimes when you have a plan, right, and this is kind of ties back into, um, you know, uh, segregating the outcome from the plan itself, right? Like the outcome doesn't
exactly.
necessarily have anything to do with the strength and integrity of the plan. But your plan was
Yeah,
great going into it, right? So it's not unreasonable that you did get lucky going into it with a good plan, right? But the
yeah. I
way,
mean, that's where I like to kind of put some sort of a line in the sand, because it would be too easy to say, oh, well played, you basically sold half of your stock, and at the end of the day, the last, tranche of your stock that you sold was right on top. So, well played, you kind of guessed it, you nailed it well, but it wasn't because I was thinking it would have stopped at 60K. It was just because it was like decided ahead of times, like 30, 40, 50. you know, it sounds great, it looks great, just with benefit of hindsight. But back then I wasn't really thinking about I'm gonna be golden, or I'm gonna tell this story to people and they're gonna congratulate with me because I was smart. It was just a matter of average purchasing price and levels that we hit along the run up.
yeah, well, here's
That's
the
it.
thing: is like, let's go back to the scenario where Bitcoin resumes a bullish run on the macro, and then sort of breaks out into parabolic rally. Um, if you start distributing at a certain point, maybe according to your plan, and you do it in a way where you're not trying to time the market, you have maybe your distribute start you sell 3%, right? And then
Yeah,
the next uh, week you sell 4%, right? In this gradual acceleration, and then maybe the next week 5% or something like that, week after week, right? Very small yet increasing increments into a parabolic rally. You will get lucky, right? Just because that's the nature of it, right? Because eventually the parabolic will blow off, and
yeah,
your distribution in an accelerating pattern will naturally hit the highest percentage into the peak of the blow off. And so
yes,
it'll feel like you're getting lucky, but really you
sooner or
just
later,
approach
yeah.
it with a solid plan. You didn't let it get to your head and say, I'm never going to sell, right? And so you kind of blunted the
But
euphoria, but that's very
I,
difficult to do in the moment, right? If you don't have that plan laid out ahead of time.
I mean, you know what? It was. I mean, if I think back, if I look back at it right now, because I mean, we are just more than 1 year past that point. But if I look back at it now, I really feel like, how the fuck was I able to do it? Because I mean, looking at back it is kind of strange because I just think, when you see a market going up like that, I mean, who the fuck on earth would dare to sell it? And I was thinking to it, and I was like, well, I kinda sold it. I mean, of course, 10%, 10%, 10%, but I sold it gradually, and it is. I think at a point, it is another thing that I think a lot of traders should develop, right? You know, being able to scale out a position while you are in profit, and maybe that time around it was just maybe you could call it the luck of the first timer or whatever, but I mean it kind of played out well for me, and it is some sort of a reinforcing behavior if you want, and it kind of puts me to keep believing it that I I need to approach the market like that because you know even if you are really vested into Bitcoin, and even if you really believe it's gonna reach, highs are about above 100k, 200k, whatever, but having a solid plan about when you're gonna take profit and be kind of adamant on those times where you're gonna realize profit, it is a very important part of your energy. Doesn't matter. Whatever it is, it could be an intraday trade or a long-term investment. But I think you need to have those spots, those moments, those lines in the sand where where you need to say, at this point, I'm gonna take something off because that's my strategy, and I need to stick to it if I want to be profitable in the long run.
Yeah,